The ballroom fell silent as he walked in. Victoria Ashford had invited her driver as a joke, entertainment for Manhattan's elite. But when Jonathan Miller stepped through those doors, champagne glasses shattered and powerful men went pale. They recognized him, the fallen billionaire her father destroyed, the man whose empire became her wealth. Now, standing before the cameras she'd gathered to mock him, Victoria's cruelty was about to become her downfall. Hey family, welcome to Real Life Heart Stories. Please subscribe and give this video a like. It truly means the world to us. Don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you never miss a new upload. Thank you so much for the support. Now, sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's story. The crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the Manhattan Grand Hotel ballroom as Victoria Ashford raised her champagne glass high. 200 wealthy citizens surrounded her, designer gowns swishing across marble floors. Camera phones pointed in her direction as laughter rippled through the crowd. And the best part, Victoria announced, her voice dripping with amusement. I actually invited my driver tonight. Yes, you heard that correctly. My driver. The crowd erupted. A woman in a red gown gasped dramatically. Victoria, you didn't. I absolutely did. Jonathan Miller. I thought, why not give him a taste of our world? It'll be entertaining. Victoria's smile widened as more phones turned toward her. He's probably standing outside right now, terrified to walk in. This is cruel, even for you, someone said, laughing. Oh, don't worry. I'll be kind. I'll introduce him to everyone. Can you imagine? A driver surrounded by billionaires? He'll probably. The heavy double doors at the entrance swung open. The sound cut through the chatter like a knife. Victoria turned, her smile frozen, expecting to see Jonathan shuffling nervously. Instead, he stood perfectly still. His black suit was simple but immaculate. His shoulders were straight, his expression calm. He didn't fidget. His eyes swept across the room with quiet confidence. The laughter near the door died first. Then conversations stopped. Like a wave, silence spread through the ballroom. Victoria's smile faltered as she watched her guests' faces change from amusement to shock. Near the bar, a silver-haired man dropped his glass. It shattered against the floor, but nobody moved. The man's face went white. That's impossible, he whispered, pointing. That's Jonathan Miller. The name spread like wildfire. Heads turned, eyes widened, faces went pale. A businessman loosened his tie, sweat forming on his forehead. A woman clutched her husband's arm, knuckles white. Even the string quartet stopped playing mid-note. Victoria felt the shift like the ground moving beneath her feet. Every eye locked on her driver. The man she'd mocked. The man she'd invited as entertainment. Jonathan's gaze found hers across the room. He didn't smile. He simply nodded once and began walking forward. His footsteps echoed in the silence. The crowd parted before him automatically. Victoria, a voice hissed beside her. Richard Thornton, a powerful CEO, grabbed her elbow. His confidence had vanished. Tell me that's not who I think it is. That's my driver, Victoria said, but uncertainty crept into her voice. I don't understand why everyone's. Your driver. Richard's voice cracked. Victoria, do you have any idea who that man really is? Jonathan stopped 10 feet from Victoria. The silence was suffocating. Someone's phone buzzed, absurdly loud. Good evening, Ms. Ashford, Jonathan said quietly, his voice steady and calm. Thank you for the invitation. Victoria opened her mouth, but no words came. The room held its breath, waiting. 3 weeks earlier, Victoria lounged in the back of her Mercedes, scrolling through social media as Jonathan drove through Manhattan traffic. She was planning her annual charity gala, already imagining the attention. Jonathan, she said without looking up. How long have you been driving for me? 18 months, Ms. Ashford. 18 months of perfect punctuality. Never a complaint. Never even a conversation. She glanced at his reflection. You're like a shadow. Always there but never noticed. I believe in being professional, ma'am. Professional, right? Victoria tapped her screen, then paused as an idea formed. Delicious, daring, perfect for social media. Jonathan, do you own a formal suit? I do, ma'am. A good one? Not something from a discount store. There was the briefest pause. It's acceptable. Perfect. Victoria smiled. I'm hosting my annual gala in 3 weeks. Very exclusive. Manhattan's absolute elite. I think you should attend. The car slowed slightly. Ma'am, you heard me. I'm inviting you as my guest. It'll be fun. You can see how the wealthy live. Meet interesting people. Consider it a bonus for your excellent service. Ms. Ashford, that's generous. But I don't think I would fit. Nonsense. I insist. Everyone should experience luxury at least once. Right? Victoria's tone made it clear the decision was final. Besides, it'll make for a wonderful story. My friends will love it. Jonathan was silent for several seconds. Finally, he nodded. If you insist, Ms. Ashford. Thank you. Wonderful. I'll send you the details. Victoria returned to her phone, already composing the perfect post. The reactions would be priceless. She could already hear her friends' laughter. My driver, Jonathan. Yes, from Brooklyn. Can you believe it? She didn't notice Jonathan's hands tighten on the steering wheel or the brief flash of something in his eyes. That evening, Victoria called her best friend, Melissa, while sipping wine on her penthouse balcony. You won't believe what I just did, Victoria said, excitement bubbling in her voice. Tell me. I invited my driver to the gala. Melissa gasped, then laughed. You did not. I absolutely did. Can you imagine Jonathan Miller standing in the Grand Hotel surrounded by Manhattan's elite? He'll probably hide in the corner all night, terrified. Victoria, you're evil. I know, but honestly, it'll be hilarious. The man drives cars for a living. What's he going to talk about? Traffic routes. Victoria laughed. And I'll look magnanimous. The generous socialite who includes the little people. The press will eat it up. You've thought this through. Always. Victoria took another sip. I'm already planning my introduction speech. Something about breaking down social barriers while being completely condescending without seeming like it. They laughed together, Victoria imagining the attention, the photos, the viral potential. Meanwhile, across the city in a modest Brooklyn apartment, Jonathan sat at his kitchen table. The apartment was clean but sparse. He stared at a photograph showing a younger version of himself standing in front of a massive glass building, his name carved into the entrance. Miller Industries. He set the photo down and looked at his phone, where Victoria's text glowed, confirming the gala details. His thumb hovered before he typed, confirmed. Then Jonathan walked to his closet and pulled out a garment bag from the back, hidden behind everyday clothes. He unzipped it slowly, revealing a perfectly preserved bespoke suit. The suit he'd worn to board meetings and power dinners. The suit he'd worn when he'd had everything. He ran his fingers over the fabric, remembering. The 3 weeks passed quickly. Victoria threw herself into preparation, treating the gala like a Broadway production where she was the star. Every detail had to be perfect. She posted teaser messages on social media. Can't wait for the gala. Special surprise guest this year. Her followers speculated wildly. A celebrity? Politician? Victoria smiled at each notification. Jonathan continued his routine without change. Every morning, he arrived at exactly 7 o'clock. He drove Victoria to meetings, appointments, shopping trips. He opened doors, carried bags, maintained his professional silence. But Victoria didn't notice how his eyes lingered on certain buildings they passed or the catch in his breath when they drove past the old Miller Industries headquarters, now owned by someone else. She wasn't looking. To her, Jonathan was just the driver. A prop. Only 3 more days, she told Melissa during lunch at an exclusive restaurant. I've got everything coordinated. And Jonathan confirmed he'll be there. Are you really going through with this? Melissa asked. Of course. It's going to be perfect. I've prepared a little speech about inclusivity. I'll sound so progressive while everyone knows I'm being ridiculous. Victoria laughed. The irony is the whole point. You realize you're probably going to embarrass this man in front of hundreds of people? He'll be fine. Free food, fancy environment. When else would someone like him get this opportunity? Someone like him, Melissa repeated quietly. You know what I mean. This will be the highlight of his year. On the morning of the gala, Victoria spent 5 hours preparing. Hair, makeup, nails, dress. Everything had to be flawless. She chose a stunning silver gown costing more than most people's monthly rent. She took a dozen selfies, posting the best ones. The likes poured in immediately. Stunning. Gorgeous. Can't wait. By 6 o'clock, she was ready. She'd given Jonathan the evening off to prepare himself. She wanted him to arrive separately. The impact would be better that way. The ballroom was perfect when she arrived. Crystal chandeliers, white roses, champagne fountains. Guests began arriving in designer gowns and diamonds. Conversations hummed with confidence. Victoria worked the room like a politician, greeting everyone, posing for photos. At 7:30, she gathered her closest friends near the center. I have to tell you all something, Victoria said, her voice carrying. Other conversations quieted. I've done something unconventional this year. What did you do, Victoria? I invited my driver to the gala. Shocked silence. Then laughter rippled through the group. You didn't. A woman looked delighted. I absolutely did. His name is Jonathan Miller. From Brooklyn. Very quiet, very professional. I thought, why not give him a taste of this world? More laughter. Phones came out, recording. This is either generous or cruel, a man said. Can't it be both? Victoria smiled. I think it's important to stay connected to regular people. What better way than to include them directly? The group murmured agreement, though amusement was obvious. People spread the word. Victoria invited her driver. This should be interesting. A crowd gathered, drinks in hand, phones ready. Victoria stood at the center, basking in attention. This was her moment. In minutes, Jonathan would walk through those doors, awkward and overwhelmed, and she'd be the gracious hostess. The photos would be everywhere. She raised her glass higher. And the best part, I actually invited my driver tonight. Then the doors opened, and everything changed. Before you find out what happens next, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss this. The silence that fell wasn't anticipation. It was shock. Victoria turned and saw Jonathan standing in the doorway, but it wasn't the awkward entrance she'd expected. He stood with perfect posture, his simple suit somehow elegant. His face was calm. He didn't look nervous. He looked like he belonged. Near the bar, a man's glass shattered. That's impossible, he whispered. That's Jonathan Miller. The name rippled through the crowd. Heads whipped around. Eyes widened. Faces went pale. Victoria watched her guests transform from amused spectators to something else. Fear? Respect? What's happening? She whispered to Richard beside her. Richard stared at Jonathan, ashen. Victoria, he said, voice shaking. What have you done? Jonathan's eyes found Victoria. He nodded once and began walking. Each step echoed. The crowd parted automatically. Victoria's heart pounded. This wasn't the plan. She was losing control. Jonathan stopped 10 feet away. The ballroom watched in silence. Good evening, Ms. Ashford, he said quietly. Thank you for the invitation. Victoria tried to speak, to laugh it off, but whispers started. That's Jonathan Miller. It can't be. After all these years. I'm sorry, Victoria managed, forcing a smile. I think there's confusion. This is Jonathan Miller, my driver. We know who he is. A woman's voice cut through, cold, hard. Catherine Montgomery, one of Manhattan's most powerful socialites, stared at her. The question is, do you? I don't understand, Victoria said, her voice smaller. No, Catherine said quietly. You clearly don't. The mockery was turning toward her now, and she didn't understand why. A distinguished man in his 70s stepped forward. Charles Davidson, one of Manhattan's most respected businessmen. Ms. Ashford, Charles said with authority. "The man you've employed as your driver, the man you invited as a joke, is Jonathan Miller. 10 years ago, he was one of New York's most successful businessmen. Miller Industries. You might have heard of it." Victoria's blood turned cold. Miller Industries. A corporate empire worth billions. But that was years ago, before it collapsed. Before. "That can't be," she whispered. "That was years ago. That man disappeared. He lost everything." "He did lose everything," Charles said quietly. "His company was taken in a hostile takeover. His partners betrayed him. His assets were seized. His reputation destroyed. He disappeared from public life." Charles looked at Jonathan with respect. But he didn't stop existing. He chose to rebuild privately, quietly, with dignity. The word dignity hung like an accusation. Victoria felt her face burning. Phones were recording. The same phones that had captured her joke were now documenting her humiliation. "I didn't know," she said weakly. "You weren't supposed to know." Jonathan spoke quietly but clearly. "That was the point. I wanted anonymity. I wanted to work, to rebuild, without my past following me everywhere." He paused. "I took the driver position intentionally. It was honest work, quiet work. It gave me time to think, to plan, to become someone better." "But why didn't you tell me?" Victoria asked. "Why would I? You never asked about my life, Ms. Ashford. You never asked about my past or dreams or anything beyond whether I'd be on time tomorrow morning." Jonathan's tone wasn't cruel, just factual. "I was simply the driver. As you said, I was like furniture." People in the crowd looked down. Victoria felt tears threatening. "Wait!" Another voice called. A younger man pushed through, phone in hand, face pale. "There's more. I just looked it up. Miller Industries was acquired by Ashford Capital 10 years ago." Ashford Capital. He looked at Victoria. "Does that sound familiar?" Victoria's stomach dropped. Ashford Capital. Her father's company. The source of her wealth. The man continued reading. "Ashford Capital purchased Miller Industries assets for a fraction of their value during Jonathan Miller's forced bankruptcy. They restructured, sold divisions, and made approximately $3 billion profit." He looked up. "Victoria, your family's wealth is literally built on this man's loss." The ballroom erupted. Not laughter. Shocked murmurs. Phones everywhere, searching, confirming, sharing. Victoria couldn't breathe. "I didn't know. My father never told me. I was young. I didn't pay attention." "But you benefited," Catherine said coldly. "Every dress you wear, every party you throw, all built on someone else's destruction. That's not fair. I didn't do anything wrong. I couldn't control what my father—" "No," Jonathan said quietly. Everyone fell silent. "You couldn't control what your father did. That's true. But Ms. Ashford, you invited me here as entertainment. You planned to mock me in front of Manhattan's elite. You wanted to laugh at the poor driver who didn't know which fork to use. You reduced me to a joke without knowing anything about me." He paused. "That you did control." The truth settled like a weight. Victoria wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. "I didn't mean," she started. "Yes, you did," Charles interrupted gently. "We all know you did, Victoria. And if he'd been just a driver with no history, would that have made it better? Would mocking someone for honest work have been acceptable?" Victoria had no answer. Jonathan stepped forward slightly. "Ms. Ashford, I want you to understand something. I don't hate you. I don't blame you for your father's decisions. That's not why I accepted your invitation." "Then why?" Victoria whispered. "Why did you come?" "Because I wanted to see if I could stand in a room like this again and not feel shame." Jonathan's voice was steady but emotional now. "I wanted to know if I could face the world that destroyed me and still maintain my dignity. And I have. Your invitation gave me that opportunity, even if you didn't intend it." He turned to the crowd. 10 years ago, I stood at the top of this world. I had wealth, power, influence. I lost it all because I trusted the wrong people and made wrong decisions. I deserved to lose the company. I made mistakes. He paused. But I didn't deserve to lose myself. So I spent 10 years rebuilding. Not the empire, not the wealth, but the man. I learned humility. I learned patience. I learned that honest work has value regardless of the title. Complete silence. Even the waiters stopped moving. I don't want my old life back, Jonathan continued. I don't want to be who I was. But I won't be ashamed of who I am now. I'm a driver. I do good work. I'm reliable and professional. That's worth something. That has dignity. Someone started clapping. Slowly. Then another. Within seconds, half the ballroom was applauding. Not mockery. Genuine respect. Victoria stood frozen, watching her event transform. This was supposed to be her night. Her triumph. Instead, she was being exposed by simple truth. I should leave, Jonathan said quietly to her. Thank you again. He turned, but Richard stepped forward. Wait, Mr. Miller, please. I'd like to speak with you about something. Business. Real business. Several others moved forward. Mr. Miller, I'd love to discuss an opportunity. Jonathan, do you have time to talk? I've been hoping to reach you for years. Victoria watched in shock as her guests surrounded Jonathan, not mocking him, offering respect, opportunities, connections. The people who'd been laughing at her joke were treating her driver like royalty, because he wasn't just a driver. He'd never been just a driver, and she'd been too blind to see it. Melissa touched her arm, expression sad. Victoria, you should know. This is already viral. Someone was live streaming. Victoria felt the ground disappear. What? Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's everywhere. Socialite mocks driver who turns out to be fallen billionaire. The comments are not kind. Victoria grabbed the phone and scrolled. Thousands of comments appearing in real time. This is disgusting. She's so cruel. Imagine mocking someone for honest work. Her father destroyed him and she mocked him? Evil. This is why people hate the rich. Her follower count was dropping. Her brand partnerships were commenting. We do not support this behavior. This does not align with our values. Victoria's carefully constructed life was collapsing, just like Jonathan's had 10 years ago. The difference was, she'd done this to herself. If this story is making you think about how we treat others, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and share this video. Jonathan made his way toward the exit, business people walking with him, deep in conversation. He moved with quiet dignity. At the door, he turned back one final time. His eyes found Victoria's. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply nodded, the same polite acknowledgement he'd given her countless times, and stepped through the doors. The ballroom erupted in conversation. Everyone talking at once, phones everywhere, the story spreading. Victoria stood alone in the center, feeling invisible for the first time in her life. Catherine approached, expression hard. I hope you're satisfied, Victoria. You wanted entertainment. You got it. Just not the way you planned. I didn't know, Victoria said, knowing how pathetic it sounded. That's the problem, Catherine replied. You didn't know because you never bothered to ask. You never saw him as a person, just as a prop for your amusement. And now everyone knows exactly who you are. Catherine walked away, taking other influential guests with her. Victoria watched those relationships sever. Her social standing, built over years, was crumbling in minutes. Richard remained one of the few. Victoria, I'll give you advice because I knew your father. Take responsibility. Apologize publicly. Don't make excuses. Don't play victim. Own what you did and be better. He paused. And think about the people in your life you treat as invisible. We all have them. This could be a wake-up call. He left too, leaving Victoria in the ballroom that suddenly felt much too large and empty. Melissa stayed beside her. What are you going to do? I don't know, Victoria whispered. I really don't know. The next morning, Victoria woke to 300 missed calls and 1,000 messages. News outlets requesting comments. Her publicist in crisis mode. Her father furious. Her social media accounts were war zones. She sat on her balcony, The same spot where she'd laughed about her brilliant plan 3 weeks ago. Now the laughter seemed cruel in memory. She held her phone, staring at a blank text to Jonathan's number. What could she say? Sorry I tried to humiliate you? Sorry I never saw you as human? Sorry my family destroyed your life and I benefited without caring. Any apology felt inadequate. But Richard was right. She had to try. With shaking fingers, she began typing. 3 days later, Victoria posted a video. No makeup, no fancy clothes, no script. Just her, sitting in her apartment, looking tired and small. I need to talk about what happened at my gala, she began. I need to talk about Jonathan Miller and what I did and why it was wrong. She took a breath. I invited Jonathan to my event as a joke. I wanted to mock him for being a driver, for not being wealthy, for not being part of my world. I thought it would be funny. And it did get attention, just not the kind I wanted. But here's the thing. Even if Jonathan hadn't been a former businessman, even if he really had been just a driver, what I did would still be wrong. Mocking someone for honest work is wrong. Treating people as less than human because they have less money is wrong. Inviting someone somewhere to humiliate them is cruel. Victoria felt tears but didn't wipe them away. My family did benefit from Jonathan's loss. I didn't know the details, but I should have. I lived off that wealth without questioning where it came from or who it hurt. That's on me. Jonathan Miller showed more grace in that ballroom than I've shown in my entire life. He stood there with dignity while I tried to take it from him. He could have destroyed me, but he didn't. He just told the truth and walked away. She paused. I'm sorry, Jonathan. I know that's not enough. I know words don't fix what I did. But I'm sorry. And I'm going to try to be better. I'm going to try to see people. Really see them. Not as entertainment or props or invisible, but as human beings with value. And to everyone watching, please understand, the way I treated Jonathan isn't unique to me. We all have people in our lives we treat as invisible. The person who serves our coffee, the person who cleans our office, the person who drives our car. We don't see them. We don't ask about their lives. We don't recognize their value. That needs to change. I need to change. And maybe this can remind all of us to treat every person with dignity, regardless of their job, their bank account, or their position. Because true class isn't about wealth. It's about character. And Jonathan Miller has more class than I ever will. She ended the video and posted it before she could second guess. The response was mixed. Some accepted her apology. Others said it was too little, too late. Many remained angry, and she didn't blame them. But at least she'd said it. At least she'd tried. A week later, Victoria was driving herself for the first time in years. She'd let Jonathan go with full severance and a reference letter Richard had helped her write. She pulled up to a stoplight and glanced at the car next to her. The driver was young, wearing a delivery uniform. He was singing, drumming on the steering wheel, looking tired but happy. Before the gala, Victoria would never have noticed him. He would have been invisible. But now she found herself wondering about him. Where was he going? What was his story? What dreams did he have? The light turned green and he drove away, still singing, unaware he'd been seen. And Victoria drove on, finally beginning to understand what Jonathan had taught her. That every person has a story. Every person has value. And you never really know who someone is until you take the time to look. Wealth can be borrowed, inherited, or stolen. But character has to be built. One choice at a time. One moment at a time. One person at a time. Jonathan Miller had built his character through 10 years of humility and honest work. And now, watching her own life crumble, Victoria was finally beginning to understand what that meant. True class wasn't about designer clothes or expensive jewelry or exclusive parties. True class was about how you treated people when you had nothing to gain from being kind. It was about dignity in hardship. It was about choosing to rebuild rather than seeking revenge. Jonathan had shown her all of that in one quiet, powerful moment. And she would spend the rest of her life trying to learn from it. If the story touched you, if it made you think about how you see and treat people around you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And most importantly, look around at the people in your life you might not be seeing. Really see them, because everyone deserves dignity. Everyone deserves respect. And you never know whose life might teach you the most important lessons of all.